2025. Is the sound okay? There's something wrong with this.
We're getting sound out of here.
Looks like.
We'll need that so we can hear.
Yeah, I'm not even in there. Yeah.
If the microphones on the tables are working, then everybody with PCs should be muted on their devices.
Okay. So where is it coming from?
We can't hear Greg, so that was.
I'll fix that.
I think it's coming from laptop.
Yes.
Is there a laptop there?
That's usually the problem, but it's not the problem now.
So if you look at the participants list, you can see by which microphone is flashing.
Okay, let me talk. Is me? But I'm talking. So
You can mute your computer.
I think it's muted.
Also, I think the volume should be down or off of each laptop.
It is muted. It's not me this time. Okay, it sounds all right.
That resolved it.
Okay. So Connie, could you please call the roll?
We're giving her a microphone.
Is it that computer? Or that one has to stay on?
Yours is turned off, Chris?
Claire,
Okay.
if you could check again, and yours is the only one showing up as not muted on your computer.
Oh, look at the Zoom window. Sorry. So.
Okay, now we are hearing nothing from the meeting room.
As Dave said, somebody muted the meeting room.
Kimberly leading the meetings for the last 2 weeks. I'm glad to be back, but I appreciate the help.
We've got you live again.
So the first item on the agenda is reports from.
Dave says he can't hear us.
No, you're back again.
Michael.
I can hear you.
Are people not able to hear us on Zoom?
I can hear you.
We can hear.
Oh, yes, no.
Dave is reporting nothing from the meeting room is audible.
That was before you fixed it.
We can
But we
hear.
can't.
That's old
We
news.
can hear. We hear everything. Thank you.
The volume is all the way up, so he should be able to on that.
Looks like the woman from the chamber is trying to speak.
The meeting room just went mute again.
Agreed. Whoever did something muted the meeting room.
So I have the volume on. Oh, I see the problem.
Now you're back.
I see the problem. There's a mute button on here. I need to unmute the screen.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah, it keeps muted on Zoom.
Is Zoom muting that?
We can hear the room now.
Yeah, the room is great right now.
Oh, you can hear us? We need to be able to hear you.
Can you hear me?
That one is how they hear.
Okay, but we can't hear them though.
You can't hear me,
I
Scott?
could,
You can't hear?
it's just a volume issue.
Okay, I think it's big.
Okay.
Okay. Is
The
there
volume on that's all the way up.
anybody here from the county to give us a report? Apparently not.
See Deborah Penrose is
Yeah,
here.
but not the count. So we'll go to the city of Half Moon Bay, Deborah Penrose.
Hey, Claire? Claire?
Deborah, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Talking
Can
and
you
there's no
hear
phone. We
me?
can't hear you.
Are you muted, Deborah?
No, she's.
I am not muted. I can hear.
Wait. Claire, can you hear me?
Try
Or
now
Dave,
again.
can you hear me?
Nicholas is here
Nicholas is
as
here.
well.
This is Dan on Zoom. I can hear you,
Dan
Nicholas.
is talking, but.
Thanks, Dan, appreciate it.
Can hear you guys.
Dang
Can
it.
you hear me now?
Nicholas joined the meeting.
We're gonna have.
Somebody thinks there's something going on here, they're free to look.
Do we need to
I don't know.
restart? What's the?
There are
guidance?
two participants related to the recording. One is
We'll be able
called
to hear them
PTV
off the
Live.
computers.
The other one is called the meeting room.
Hey, Gus.
So has anybody got an idea what to do?
I would restart the Zoom.
I would try unmuting PCTV Live, see if that works.
considered the award of a contract for Frenchman's Creek Park Improvement Project, Phase 2, and decided because of the very high cost of all of the bids that it would reject each and every one of the bids and ask staff to please pursue alternative option 1, which was to modify the scope to align with available Prop 68 grant funding.
Recording in progress.
And to revise the design and re-advertise the bid opening. Let's see. Saturday, we had our inaugural nonprofit day at the Ted Adcock Community Center. The event came from a discussion at the CSFA cohort meeting, which is community nonprofit group cohort meeting, as a way to expose more of the nonprofits to each other so that they can work together and not duplicate and help each other do a better job, as well as for members of the community seeking volunteer opportunities or services. One other item, at the AAC Architectural Advisory Committee meeting a few weeks ago, the AAC reviewed the current status and concepts related to Main Street Gateway at 92. This, as you know, has been something the city's been talking about, doing something about for many years, as long as I've been on council, which is 10 years now. And we finally got around to getting some designs for a gateway, and it turns out that they felt the gateway couldn't serve two purposes at the same time. One is being a wayfinding sign, that is telling people as you're coming down 92 that we have a great downtown, and please visit Main Street by turning left and getting to downtown. And also serve as a gateway just to announce Half Moon Bay. So staff is looking at revised scope of work right now. Apparently there are difficulties with undergrounding undergrounding the gateway because of utilities and things that are in the way, and private property issues, as well as many other things. And the idea was perhaps to move it on to Main Street at the bridge, but then you don't see it from 92. So it's a nice sign, but it doesn't help get more business to downtown. And that's about it.
Thank you, Deborah. Are there any questions for Deborah? I guess not. Thank you very much. I believe that Nicholas is here.
I see Marisol here.
Everybody's helping me out. Okay. Nicholas, we'll go ahead with you since you're here and ready to go, and then we'll go back to Mary.
Respectfully, I'll defer to Marisol coming for,
That'd be
since she's
fine.
representing the supervisor.
Okay, go ahead, Marisol, please. You're muted.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Nick. I appreciate that. I just ended a meeting, so I'm just jumping into this meeting. Thank you for your patience. So I wanted to let you all know that I received an email from Greg regarding the I believe it was the Ferdinand Avenue project and versus the Santa Maria. I just wanted to let you know that we had already been looking at that, Greg, before you sent it. And I actually had a family medical emergency yesterday, and I wasn't present to be able to check and follow up on some email, but I knew that I would be communicating with you all today. So I just wanted to relay that, that we also met with DPW today, and we have been in discussion about it. What I can tell you is that although you may find information on the Ferdinand project, there's also a website that I can put in the chat right now so that you can look at it, since it's already posted, or it's been online. With respect to the Santa Maria, there is going to be an upcoming meeting on April 23rd, I believe. I think you have that date, Claire. So is that right?
I do not have any correspondence to that effect.
Who may have received? Okay, I'm gonna double check to see who received the email. But there is supposed to be a meeting, I believe, where DPW will come and present. We also
Oh,
received,
I know what you're talking about, Marisol. I'm sorry.
yeah,
DPW will be here presenting what they're doing at our next MCC meeting.
yes, okay, thank you. So what I did want to relay is that I spoke to Christoph, who is sorry, I forgot Christoph's whole title, but he's one of the engineers on staff. He can give a presentation, whether it be PowerPoint if you wish, and then he can have a question and answer portion after the presentation if that is what you wish. But if you have any
We've already got it
specifics,
set up.
okay. Oh, okay, then great, great. So then now that you know that that's set up, then I also wanted to make you aware that we've also learned after our meeting with the department that they have been looking at your report, the stormwater report that I think is posted on the Midcoast Council website. So just wanted to let you know that. And that is all that I have to report for now.
Thanks, Marisol. I think there's at least one question for you.
Sure.
Anybody in the council have a question for Marisol?
Yep.
Chris?
Thanks for that update, Marisol, and for looking into Ferdinand. So I think the question still is that being prioritized because it was basically in the pipeline for some time now? Question from the public was why that one was at the top of the list.
I wouldn't say the word prioritized. I think it's just a matter of what is being able to. I think there was an intent to discuss both issues, but maybe that one had already been started. I'm not sure if it was really because there was an intent to really just prioritize that one. But I'm gonna let Christoph answer that fully for when he comes to present to you guys.
Okay, thank you. And then second, you said what agency at the county is looking at the stormwater report that's posted? DPW?
Yeah, the Department of Public Works.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Sid, I see your hand up. Or sorry,
No,
Claire.
well, actually, would you let me call on? We have another question from the council, from Chris, not from Chris, from Kevin.
Kevin? Hi, Marisol.
Hi, Kevin.
An email, I think the email was sent to, you were copied on the email. You just said you were out of the office. And as you just mentioned, the stormwater report it is being looked at. I know it's a lengthy report, but the question posed to your office was the implication of having to redo or kind of revisit any issue that is in the report. If you were to act on any of those issues, would you indeed have to go back and redo a peer review and redo the research that Greg has completed? I know that he spent a lot of time on that, but I think hearing from you regarding that would be better than me making a statement.
I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that. I think it would probably come from DPW, Kevin. I think that whatever concerns there may be, they can be given to DPW, but I also think that's probably a question that can be answered with a department.
Okay. We'll
Yeah,
follow up.
sure.
Sid, you had a question for Marisol? Sid Young?
Are we going to public comments or public?
There.
I just wanted to ask. I'm
Can
just
you
trying to.
No, we're, as opposed to questions from the council for Marisol?
Yeah.
You had one?
No, I'm just trying to
I
understand.
didn't see anybody else with their hand up.
Okay, so we're moving to public.
Yes, go ahead, Sid.
Thank you.
Well, I'm trying to get on, but I'm on my phone and the stupid little unmute doesn't work. So can you unmute me from there?
We can hear you fine.
Okay.
Go ahead, Sid, we can hear you.
Okay. The question for Marisol, I was going to raise my hand later about
Montero Water and Sanitary District and the emergency digging that they're doing out in Seal Cove, but we do have some stormwater issues out there too. So will Christoph be coming to talk about the Seal Cove issues on San Lucas as well? Or can you ask him to, since he'll be out here?
I'm gonna ask, but what I know that I can tell you that I know for sure is that it would be the first two issues would be Ferdinand and the Santa Maria.
Right,
So
I understand.
So Seal Cove, for that we have been. I can double check with the supervisor, but I believe that you may be given an individual appointment. The supervisor can meet individually with a resident if it's about Seal Cove.
Okay.
I guess I
so
meant for the whole neighborhood, but that's okay. You don't want to update everybody all at once, basically.
No, wait, I think
that's all right.
I think Sid, I would be happy to ask Christoph if it's appropriate for him to address Seal Cove when he comes next meeting.
Thank you so much. That's all we asked, Claire. That's great.
Okay, thank
there's
you.
another item though that I wanted to update, but again, I'm catching up since I was out one day. Greg, if you're online, I can see you online. There were a couple of emails that you had sent me regarding a support letter that I'm actually going to be working on, and it was about, you had corrected me on the name of that. Do you recall that conversation in the last, not in the last meeting, but I think it was maybe 2 meetings ago?
There are two possible things that you could be working on. One is a letter in support of the group called Red Alert Montero Moss Beach. And the other is the issue that Burnett and I raised, where the Parks Department has declined to take action on the drainage in Quarry Park. Could be either of those.
No, it's about the bypass, I believe.
Okay, that's the Red
Yeah.
Alert Montero Moss Beach.
Yeah, it's the bypass.
I can speak to that later.
Yeah, no, that is all. I just wanted to give that update that I'm going to be preparing a letter and then submitting it to the supervisor for review. So.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Marisol.
Sure.
We have a report from Nicholas, and did I understand correctly that said that you have something to update us from MWSD, or was that my mistake? We'll go ahead with Nicholas, please.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Thanks everyone for having me. I was asked if I'd be willing to come tonight. I guess there were some questions with regards to, at least as I understand it, noticing prior to our treatment, predominantly of oxalis at Pillar Point Bluff. I think it had gotten out through some channels in the community that the department did not notice the work. I spoke with my staff regarding this matter, and they were able to show me photos indicating that we had done all the proper notification. We had, the department last year or 2 years ago changed our noticing process as a result of conversations had here at the MCC. And so at the time, what we committed to was noticing on our website and in the park at least 3 days before treatment activities. And we followed that process to a T, and had notifications on our website, at the park kiosks, and then any trails that had to be closed had a separate notification there. So that was the main reason I was asked to come tonight. But certainly happy to answer any questions on that matter or any other issue.
Are there any questions for the council? Kimberly?
Thanks, Nicholas. I think, I was out there when that happened, unbeknownst to me, and the signage, I think what was most concerning to me and to others is the signing was very minimal. It was the size of a regular sheet of paper with very tiny print on one end of the trail, and there was no rope. There was nothing to tell you not to go on the trail. So I think the concern is that the signage that was there was just not enough. People would walk by and not notice it unless they went to the other end and came out and saw the bigger sign. And the trails were not closed. There was nothing to indicate the trail was closed. And, you know, for some people with small children, this is not a safe thing to have happen. And so I guess what I would like to see from parks is whether you'd be willing to actually do better about closing the trail, physically closing the trail when these things are treated, and to have better signage so that you're able to see them, instead of having to get up close to see what a little piece of paper says. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, Kimberly, it makes perfect sense. Do you know specifically what trail you were on?
Pillar Point Bluffs Trail, the trail on both ends where you enter there, you can enter from the site where the radio tower is. And there was
On the south.
on the south side, there was a little piece of paper there. And then when you go to the other side where you enter on that side, there was a larger poster size board, also with smaller print, and it wasn't immediately evident what it was telling you about. I mean, you really had to like get close to it and read it to know what the issue was. And by that time, you'd already walked the entire trail.
Yeah, and so let me check with staff. The reason I asked what trail, Kimberly, is because if we were not doing work immediately adjacent to that trail, then we wouldn't close the trail, right? So if we're doing work in a park, if we're doing work in a park in a specific area of the park, we're not gonna close every trail in that park, right? So there's a very good chance that the trails you were on were not having work done immediately adjacent to it. So I need to check with my staff specifically on that. But nonetheless, or maybe what I should say is, if you were on trails that were closed, then I think we need to look at the signage to say, okay, we had it up. I saw photos that show it was up, but we need to do a better job of drawing people's attention to that signage, because people walked right past it. So I just need to check to see if the trails you were on were being worked on or not.
I think an actual barrier would help. The Gene Lauer Trail and the Pillar Point Bluffs Trail were both open. There were other people up there, and I think it's just not a safe thing.
Well, right, but Kimberly, sorry, really quick, but Pillar Point is a big park, right? So if we're working nowhere near those trails, we're not going to close those trails, is what I'm saying.
I do understand, but up on the bluffs, especially that day, there was quite a bit of wind, and anything sprayed travels. It travels in soil being blown. It travels in air. It travels with moisture. And so, just because you're not standing on the oxalis doesn't mean that you're not being exposed to something that's been sprayed on it. And by the way, on Gene Lauer Trail, there are several clumps in a huge section of oxalis that I assume were treated that are actually on the trail.
Right. And so I think a couple things on that. So there are wind restrictions, Kimberly, right? So if the wind was if the wind was above 7 miles an hour, then you can't spray, period. So that's one thing, right? So we'd have to look at the day you were on there and what the wind speeds were. I think the other thing too is, because of the request made at this forum to have notice posted 3 days in advance, you could have been out there 2 days before work was done, or 3 days before work was done, or the day before work was done, and you would have seen the notices, because we were asked to increase noticing, which we were happy to do. So I think there's just a lot of information here that I need to probably better understand, just so I can make a more informed decision on this front.
Okay, so you'll look into exactly what was done which day and take the.
If Kimberly could that, that would certainly help.
I think more than just putting barriers up and closing the trail more effectively and making the signage more visual.
Right. No, I hear you. I guess I just want to, I hear what you're saying loud and clear. I certainly hear and understand the request. What I would say again is, we're not going to put barricades across a trail if we're not doing work near that trail, right? So we're not going to functionally close
Right.
down an entire park if we're only doing work in a very specific location. And then, again, there are very strict requirements for when work can be done and when it can't be done. And so those need to be followed to a T, right? So if it was super windy the day you were out there, as you were indicating, I presume the level of wind that you were indicating was more than 7 miles an hour. No application of herbicide should have been done on that day then. So, so that's another thing. But nonetheless, if you can email me the day that you were out there, I can check with my staff.
Sure, but again, it's not about one day and it's not about me. It's about a lot of other people who are on that trail for multiple days. The sign indicated the months-long treatment.
Yeah.
So I think.
But I think it's important, Kimberly, to understand, I raised this concern when the MCC asked us to change our noticing practice, but the concern I raised is exactly what you're saying right now, but there was no interest in hearing me out at that point. Instead, there was an interest in driving forward with a change in the notification process, which we did, and we were happy to do. But this was what you're bringing up right now is exactly one of the concerns we voiced at the time. Is it actually can lead to confusion and lead to situations where people think something's happening on a certain day when in fact it's not. So I hear what you're saying. I want to work with my staff to come up with a better way of at least drawing attention to the signs, as well as drawing attention to the dates in which work is being done, because I think notification is very, very important. And so I hear you loud and clear on that. I think we'll probably just have to agree to disagree with regards to barricades across trails if work isn't being done anywhere near those trails.
Are there any other questions for Nicholas from the council? I see Greg Diegas and Dan Haggerty have questions for you. Go ahead, Greg.
Greg, you're on mute.
I apologize if this is a surprise to you, Nick, but back on February 26th, the Parks Commission at their meeting changed a process that was in place from the previous commission, where they were going to discuss the drainage in Quarry Park and the mitigation of that. And I guess I'd call it a vote was taken at that time to not do anything as a Parks Commission and instead refer that drainage problem to one shoreline. I watched a video of parts of that meeting. So I took that information, I put in my stormwater report a record of what was said and done. And so that's in an email I just sent you that you haven't had time to read if you haven't seen it before. And I also wrote to one shoreline, to Len Matterman and the woman who's handling stormwater, Summer Bundy. And they said that they have no knowledge. One shoreline was not aware of this issue and has not been consulted. And that was on March 24th. So a little less than a month later. So Parks was handing the issue to one shoreline. One shoreline says it hasn't gotten it. I won't attempt to divine on behalf of the county which agency should be owning this problem, but right now it looks like nobody is, and that is my concern. And I'm merely commenting here because I forward this to the MCC, and I'm hoping we can get something done here. It seemed to me like a very easy fix to put a culvert in across the front of that entrance to Quarry Park, because a sandbag version of that was already done, with good effect by your team a couple of years ago. All right, so that's the question is, who's going to own this problem, and can you please make sure somebody owns this problem? And maybe Marisol, you should, be advised of this too, if you're not.
Yeah, Greg, I mean, I think I'm happy to work with appropriate parties at the county to make sure this gets to one shoreline. Ultimately, the county, I'm sorry, the Parks Department has always maintained that it is not the responsibility of the Parks Department to retain water on site. I know you're saying something different. I'm just saying we've always maintained that. Every time it's come up at the Parks Commission, we've maintained the same thing. I'm happy to have this conversation again with Public Works, and I have a meeting coming up with them on a number of issues, so we can bring this up, and we'll make sure that this makes its way to one shoreline. I can also connect with Marisol offline and see what the CRISP says about this location. But I'm happy to do both of those things.
Dan,
Good, thanks.
Of course.
go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. What's going on, Dan?
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas, for your report.
Yeah.
I'd like to just ask that number one, that the community understands which exact chemical you're using to deal with this invasive. Number two, the volume, the amount, the total amount, so the community knows how much is being used, and of course, the locations. And additionally, anything that can, please continually explore all other options to avoid using chemicals. There's, as was brought up earlier, there's the wind aspect, there's there's the rain runoff aspect, there's the half-life of it in the soil, etc. So the goal is to find some workarounds. And number one, understanding that the community knows what chemicals being used, and every effort to avoid using any chemicals. And I understand it's complicated. I understand that.
Yeah.
So you can Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, and Dan, I appreciate you saying that it is complicated, because I appreciate that, and it is. And in addition to having the wind restriction, there's also moisture restrictions, right? So we can't be applying it when it's been raining. Dan, to answer your question directly though, so our current notice includes the product being used, its active ingredient, the target pest that we're looking to treat for, the areas to be treated, the application date range, the signal word, registration number, reentry period. We also include the application method, as well as the treatment goals for the application. So all that information we currently include in that notification that goes on our website and in the park.
Thank you.
And I believe
you're
that's
very welcome.
Manual report as well, correct?
Yes, and all of that, and everything we do that is IPM related is in our annual report. We released our first one in 2024. We'll release our 2024 one here in 25, and so on and so on. And all of this will be included. Claire, briefly, the work we've done in 2025 will be included in the 2026 report.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you for coming and updating us. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Of course.
We have somebody in the room that wants to ask you a question.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Jane Gray Silver. I have a couple questions for you, Nicholas.
Yeah.
One of them is about the water that goes down Santa Maria. My understanding was that there was a pond or a spring there. We went for, if you remember, that you gave us a tour with the other parks representatives. So I'm just wondering if you guys can revisit restoring that, because if that was taken out and caused some of the water runoff, and also I'm concerned if more trees come out, that those neighbors are going to get more flooding. And the only other thing I wanted to ask you regarding your signage.
Mhm.
It's from my research on this glyphosate and now that even more powerful replacements they're using for glyphosate, a lot of that has the forever plastics in it. Those are particularly dangerous for women who are pregnant, especially in their second month of pregnancy. And I'm thinking about all these moms, they're trying to eat healthy and not drink, you know, they're out with their friends, they're not going to have any alcohol. They really, I think would be so nice to let them know when you're spraying. And even when you go to the gas station, it says, you know, if you're pregnant, this has lead in it. If there was some kind of extra little notice for those parents that they then know not to get exposed to that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great to see you again, by the way. I would be, yeah, like I said, I definitely want to work with my staff to figure out a different way, a more effective way to draw attention to it. Absolutely. And with regards to Santa Maria and the creek or the pond, you know, I remember people bringing that up. I have yet to see any documentation that would indicate to me where it was, where the spring may be located, when it stopped existing, you know, anything that would even help remotely with that. If you have documentation or you know someone who does, I would love to get my eyes on that. And would love to see that if you know anyone and could send that to me.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
We were finished with the people on Zoom. I see that Sid has her hand up. We're running late. Do you have something?
Really
quickly
quick,
to say?
Claire,
Yeah.
my hand went down. I didn't mean for it to, but I'm on my cell phone. So two things. One is when the when the wind blows, I've had blowback into my lungs from spraying Roundup, and it's really bad. So I think publishing it on Nextdoor or some other type of a thing would be a better idea than just putting up a little typed sheet of paper with tiny information on it at one end of each end of the trail. So maybe a few days ahead and say what days they're going to be spraying on what trails, and then you're covered, your bases are covered. That's all I got to say. And Claire, should I had my hand up to speak on MWSD too. Are you done with Nicholas?
Well, it depends. Are you finished with Nicholas?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay.
I'm just
Okay.
suggesting. I
Yeah,
have
I
nothing to
called
say
on you
about the
earlier, Sid.
runoff down the street from Santa Maria.
I called on you earlier, but we'll finish up with Nicholas and say thank you for coming.
Okay.
Thanks, y'all. Have a great night.
Okay.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Go ahead, Sid, with your
y'all.
MWSD report.
Thank you, because it's hard for me to get the hand raise thing working and then the microphone unmuted.
Just go ahead with your report.
I am. I just wanted to say, in case people didn't realize, it was in the paper, it was published briefly on Nextdoor, that MWSD had a special meeting notice 24 hours in advance for a Seal Cove emergency meeting. They had to call the county to get permission to dig in the road at the end of San Lucas, where they've just had sawhorses up for like the last maybe 2.5 years, where they closed the road, but one of the neighbors keeps driving on it anyway. And a leak developed underneath the road, and they had to get in to repair the pipes. However, DPW wouldn't give them permission to dig in the roads, so that's why they had to call the emergency meeting. And because I live on San Lucas, I was recused, had to leave the meeting, but they did get permission to subsequent to that meeting, they got permission to go ahead and start digging, and they had it. The repairs are underway on San Lucas. They're rerouting the water line, maybe the sewer line, I'm not sure about that, onto Del Mar, and hopefully the county will reopen San Lucas and just pave it minimally, because a lot of people walk there. I've seen people walking and driving there. The one woman gets Meals on Wheels. So that's just an update for people, and stay tuned for later. If you have any questions, I'll answer them now.
Okay, I don't see any questions.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you. We'll move to public comment. Anything that is not on the agenda, 3 minutes. Anybody have public comment? I see Ann Rothman and Greg Diegas.
And Dan
Yeah,
Haggerty.
go ahead.
Thank you so much. So I was called, I've actually just wanted to comment on two things from the county. The past meeting, the first thing that concerned me was approximately, I think it was 3 meetings ago, and I was looking at the video, they had a Measure K audit done, and 30% of the monies were basically unaccounted for. They said that the reason may be that it was unspent. So that's what they're saying may be the reason for that. But at the same meeting, they went ahead and passed another Measure K fund in the tens of thousands for environmental advocates. And it was a student group. And it just bothers me that they continue to have these what seems to be pet projects of the supervisors, and it goes to these nonprofits, and then 30% of it seems to be unaccounted for or unspent, when we are now dealing with federal and state cutbacks. They seem to have these projects that really, I don't know who they're benefiting, but when there are so many people who are in need, I think that there should be a little bit closer attention to these audits and really find out where that money's going. That's the first thing. Two was the whole thing with the sheriff and the vote to remove the sheriff. We were told the reason that this had to happen immediately, that the board had to be given this right to remove her, was because there would be additional lawsuits. Well, the county executive himself is now suing for $10.5 million. And there are countless lawsuits that have come out of this whole system since it started. And I feel duped as a citizen. And I think it's really unacceptable that the county executive himself said the reason we had to have this special election was for the purpose of not having lawsuits, and he's involved in a lawsuit. So that's just my little 2 cents. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Greg?
Yeah, I wanted to report on Red Alert Montero Moss Beach. I believe some of you are aware we're trying to get the Caltrans bypass mitigated. We have a letter from MWSD that was sent to Becker and Berman last Friday. Some of us met with Mark Berman. We got his support. We produced a fact sheet and slideshows. Other members of our group have spoken at the Coastside Fire Protection District. I spoke to Ray Mueller this weekend, and he's evidenced his support, but it's a state matter, so he has to defer to Becker and Berman. We're expecting to be agendized at the upcoming Coastside Fire Protection meeting to present our information. We've asked to be agendized at the MCC, and in both cases, we'll be looking for letters of support for the mitigation of this extreme hazard. The entire water supply of Montero and Moss Beach is at risk if there's a wildfire there. That's the watershed, that's the main well, that's the main tank. And we're expecting, per what Berman and Mueller are telling me, that there will be a meeting between Becker, Berman, Mueller, Caltrans, and CAL FIRE, but we will not be involved in that meeting. So I just wanted to provide the council with an update. This is a serious matter, and we're trying to advance it as fast as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Haggerty? And then we'll close public comment.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to say just quickly, for the issue of the loss of parking due to the new bike lanes proposed, the loss of parking serving Surfers Beach and the jetty access, and any future MCC participation with organizing any kind of a meeting with agencies. I just wanted to say that I'd like to suggest that the discussion does not get more complicated than necessary. In my opinion, the important decision makers are the Harbor District, the county, Caltrans, Granada Community Services District, and the City of Half Moon Bay. And the expectation hopefully will be that those agencies come together and work towards a better plan for the focus of the most intelligent parking possibilities that does not include a North Burnham Strip parking lot. That current proposal would eventually include capacity for parking of large tour buses that would fit in the slots that's currently sold to us as a truck and a boat trailer. These large, tall tour buses would have an enormous, significant view blocking capacity. And so I just want to say that.
Get to the end of your statement, please.
Am I out of 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to say, focus on the, just the agencies that are important as you're moving forward and thinking about any kind of, and by the way, I think that the county should be leading this. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. We'll move to the consent agenda. There are 2 items on the consent agenda. One is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. And the other is to approve a letter supporting AB 259. I'm sorry, I'm not reading it correctly, but the gist of it is that the law that allows us to participate remotely is going to expire at the end of this year. And this letter supports making that permanent. So Connie, could you call the roll on the consent agenda?
I need a point of clarification.
I would like to request something be pulled from the consent agenda if I am allowed.
You want to do what? Pull something.
I want to pull the
No,
letter
you
regarding the
cannot pull
roof
something
bill.
from the consent agenda. You're not on the council.
I have a clarifying question.
Okay.
Just
Thank
You
you.
had a clarifying question?
The public is allowed to request that. The council needs to consider it and officially state no.
you just did.
And why?
Well, didn't I just do that?
Yes, you did.
Okay, what were you gonna say?
My question is that I've never heard of AB 259 or any consideration of it on the council here unless it preceded my term. So where did this come from?
We have in the previous.
So you can't talk about it unless you
Okay,
pull it from consent.
Pull it.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
pulling it.
Okay, so we'll do this at the end of the meeting. Connie, could you please call the roll on what's left of the consent agenda?
Certainly. Claire,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Gus,
Yes.
Connie, yes.
Okay, so we can go to the regular agenda. And the first item on the regular agenda is a update from the San Mateo Resource Conservation District. We have with us tonight Timothy Federal. Welcome and go ahead.
Thanks,
You
everybody.
to put something up.
Here we go.
Yeah, I think I should be good here. Just need a moment to share my slideshow. Good to see all of you.
See it.
Okay.
He's getting there.
Oh, I need sharing turned on.
You're not a co-host, I guess. Can you make him a co-host?
You are now.
Great. Thank you. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Kind of.
Yep,
There you go.
Okay, great. Well, it's good to see all of you today and be back at the MCC. If we haven't met before, my name is Timothy Federal. I am the Senior Program Manager for Forest, Health, and Fire at the RCD. So most of the updates that I'm going to give today are focused on that program. I think that's probably, in general, the issues at most pressing concern for the community at the moment. But we do have other programs, other program managers. So if there are questions after my presentation and I can connect you with the appropriate RCD staff, I'm happy to do so. If you're not familiar with what the RCD is, I think most folks here are, but I like to talk about it at every meeting just in case someone is not familiar with what the RCD is. We are a special district, much like GCSD or a water and sanitary district, and we were formed out of the Dust Bowl. There are hundreds of RCDs all across the country. There are dozens in California. We are not part of county. We are a government entity, but we're not part of the county government. We're not part of state government. We have our own board of directors and executive director. We our mission is to help people help the land. So we encourage voluntary conservation to occur. We work where we're invited, so we can work on public land, private land, across boundaries. We're non-regulatory. We can provide confidential technical assistance, outreach, education, and also implement projects, manage projects, secure grants, all that good stuff. As I mentioned before, we have 5 program areas. We have a wildlife program, water resources, a climate resiliency program, an agriculture program, and a forest health and fire program. And I mean, I guess it goes without saying, but just, you know, forests are also wildlife and they have water in them, and climate, you know, kind of impacts everything. So a lot of our work doesn't fall neatly within one program, but that's how we kind of organize ourselves in our areas of expertise. Just a little bit about my team. I don't know if you guys have met many of the folks on my team. We recently had some staffing changes within the Forest Health program. So I'm sure you guys have met or know of Kellix, who's our executive director here at the top of this pyramid. And there I am, and Joe Issel is our director of stewardship. So Joe is my supervisor. And then at the bottom here are the 4 folks that work on the Forest Health and Fire team. So we've got John Martinez, who we just hired. He started last week. He's our new district forester. He recently retired from CAL FIRE after working for 24 years in the CZU unit, originally as a forester, and then as a Forest Practice Act inspector, and then a fire investigator, and finally like a chief of admin for the Glenwood Fire Center. So really excited to have him on board. This is Carolyn Creso. She's a project manager. This week's actually her 1-year anniversary at the RCD. Eddie Sanchez manages our neighborhood chipper program, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later. And he's also managing the fuel break around La Honda. And then on the right is Erin Andrew, who actually will be starting at the RCD on May 1st. So she is coming to us from the Sierra Streams Institute. She's got a huge background of forestry. She's currently a forest ecologist at the Sierra Streams Institute, but we are also really excited to have her. If you previously worked with either David Cowman or Erica Harris, Erica managed the fuel break in Quarry Park, our most recent RCD project in Quarry Park. And David was previously our district forester. David is now the director of land stewardship at the Semper Virens Fund. And Erica is the director of land stewardship at the Siskiyou Land Trust. So they both got awesome jobs. We were sad to see them go. But happy that they got some cool things to do. David actually still works out of our office, so we get to hang out all the time. So just some high-level program highlights from the Forest Health program. Since the program's inception in 2019, we have completed over 1,000 acres of project work across the county. We've got about 600 acres of work scheduled for this and next year. Most of that is occurring in Pescadero Creek County Park, YMCA Camp Jones Gulch, the La Honda Shaded Fuel Break, and then the Highway 92 project that I'll talk about in a little bit. We have completed CEQA and Coastal Act compliance for over 9,100 acres across the county. And we have secured, over the course of our program, $23.8 million in grant funds that have been or will be invested in the county for forest health or wildfire resiliency work. 11.6, I think, million of those funds we've secured in the past 12 months. I don't know if you can see this super well, but this is just a breakdown of our funders by who's funding us. So CAL FIRE is our biggest funder. We've been really successful at securing grants from CAL FIRE, followed up by the Coastal Conservancy, about 50% of what CAL FIRE has provided us. These San Mateo County funds are really important. All of those, except for maybe $20,000, are from Measure K. Measure K is a really instrumental tool. Those funds are a really instrumental tool for our program specifically. They fund our chipper program. They also allow us to write grants, and we've been able to leverage any money, every dollar that San Mateo County has allocated to my program. At the RCD, we have brought back $10.74 worth of grant funds back into the county. So just a point there. I know we've been talking about Measure K quite a bit. We really rely on our Measure K funds in this program to really make sure that we're able to do the work that we need to do on a countywide basis. So our projects really fall into two main categories. We work on projects that foster resilient communities. This is just a list of some of those projects specific to the Midcoast. I'll talk about both these projects at the bottom: Highway 92 fuel reduction, Pedro Point wildfire resiliency, and Highway 1 fuel reduction, and also the neighborhood chipper program. Well, and the Quarry Park shaded fuel break. So quite a few of our resilient community focused projects have a Midcoast nexus. And then we also do projects that focus on healthy ecosystems. Girl Scout Camp, Butno Creek, Butno State Park. A lot of this work is down in the southern part of the county in areas that were affected by the CZU fire, which I'm sure you'll remember was a large fire that started in Butno State Park in 2020 and spread south towards Santa Cruz. Has the superlative of burning 40,000 acres within 24 hours, which is kind of crazy. But I also just wanted to point out that neither of these categories of project are mutually exclusive. When we improve the ecosystem of a forest and improve the forest health of a forest and make it less susceptible to catastrophic wildfire, we make those wildfires less likely to burn through 40,000 acres in 24 hours and have indirect benefits to the communities around those parks and forested areas by reducing the risk of wildfire, even coming close to the wildland urban interface. And similarly, when we focus on resilient communities and reducing the risk of wildfires igniting in a community, we are also protecting forests by not having a lot of superfluous ignitions. We also do hazard mitigation and emergency response work. Many of you remember in Murata East when hundreds of eucalyptus trees came down in a series of winter storms. We worked with county parks because we were already working in Quarry Park on the fuel break project. So we were able to kind of use the same contractor and kind of have some efficiencies of scale there and support county parks with that work. We've done a lot of post-fire recovery down on the South Coast and in Southern San Mateo County. Not specifically my program, but the RCD focuses a lot on floods and erosion. There's been a lot of work in Pescadero around flooding. I know that one of our teams is working with the residents of 2nd Street. So that is an aspect of our emergency response work. And then we have a rural roads program. So we help people make sure that rural roads or private roads on their properties are not, one, contributing sediment to our watersheds, and two, they're passable for emergency vehicles, and they are passable for travel in and out, for an evacuation, or for any type of emergency, and that they are stable and resilient into the future. So the bulk of what I wanted to come and talk to you guys today about is a few projects that we have upcoming that we've secured grant funds for. The first is Highway 92 Fuel Reduction Project. This project, the planning and design that's been done on this project and the time it took us to seek funding and all of that good stuff was funded by Measure K. And we were able to secure implementation funds from the Coastal Conservancy for that work, for the implementation of this project, with some matching funds from San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. The reason we chose this stretch of road, this particular stretch of Highway 92, and not the entire length, is because CEQA is already completed on this stretch of highway because it is all within San Francisco Public Utilities Commission land and Caltrans right-of-way. So there is no need for additional CEQA permitting for this particular stretch of the project. This is this stretch that CAL FIRE has determined to be the highest risk when it comes to evacuating the Midcoast in the event of a wildfire. So the goal of this project, I think so if you're looking at this map, this is the intersection with Skyline up here, Highway 35, and 280s down here, and this is the reservoir. So this is that long curvy stretch. Well, it's not that long, but that curvy steep stretch of 92 from the top of the ridge down to the highway. I'm sure many of you have driven it hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of times. You will recognize it for the dense canopy of Monterey cypress that has encroached on the roadway. And in general, there is a lot of scrub, Monterey cypress, Monterey pine, eucalyptus, all within the right of way here. And then a fair amount of pampas grass and other undesirable weedy species. So the goals of the project are going to be to reduce those fuels within the right of way and reduce the invasive species within and beyond the right of way. And then this area used to be oak woodland and oak savanna. And there still are lots of oaks down towards the watershed. And so one of the restoration goals of this project will be to reconnect some of the oak woodlands, which is why we've bumped out the area here where we plan to remove as much Monterey cypress as we can and replace it with native oaks. Oaks are more resilient to wildfire than Monterey cypress. They can survive wildfires. Monterey cypress typically do not survive wildfires, and oaks can live for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and Monterey cypress are a fairly short-lived tree in the grand scheme of things. The outcomes, as I mentioned, are to reduce the wildfire hazard, one from car accidents that happen on the highway and potentially spark a wildfire, but also the evacuation safety, and then just improved commuter traffic safety. I know that we've all seen a notice that 92 is stop and go because of an accident or a branch has fallen or a tree has fallen on the highway. So we hope to improve that. And then, as I mentioned, restore that native habitat component. And for the timeline, as I mentioned, CEQA has already been completed. We expect the final design and planning work to be completed this summer. And we will likely issue an RFB for a contractor to do the work this summer. And hopefully we can get it started this year with the goal of it being completed by the end of next year. It's only about 78 acres, so it's not a huge amount of work, although I do expect it to be fairly complex due to the extensive need for traffic control and notifications and working in alternative hours and all of that good stuff because it is a very busy stretch of highway. These are just some pictures of the current conditions of 92. This isn't the worst of it, but this is what I could get as a passenger in a car. But this is some of the Monterey cypress up here on the left, and these are oaks here. So in this situation, we would likely just limb up these oaks and make sure they're not overhanging the road versus removing them, right? But we want to make sure that any vegetation is a safe distance from the road prism. And Sid, I see you have your hand up, but I'm going to wait until the end, and I cannot wait to answer your question. So the next project is an exciting one, Pedro Point and Highway 1 wildfire resilience. Again, the planning and design of this project has been and will continue to be funded by Measure K. The implementation will be funded by the Coastal Conservancy, and I forgot to add in here also with some Caltrans dollars. And again, the goals are very similar. So reduce the dense vegetative fuels within the Caltrans right-of-way there along Highway 1, north of the Tom Lantos tunnels going into Pacifica. Manage invasive species and restore habitat. That would include eucalyptus, also Cape ivy, or other invasive species that are in that particular stretch of highway. And then also lots of outreach and education, not only to the community of the residents of Pedro Point, but the users of that property. The property is owned, most of Pedro Point is owned by the Coastal Conservancy, with the city of Pacifica owning a good portion of it as well. Let's see. So outcomes expected to be very similar as well. This is a little bit of a larger project because it does extend into the wildland urban interface of Pedro Point. So the area around these homes here. But the primary goal and the impetus for this project was improving the evacuation safety of this stretch of Highway 1. We began planning this project last year, and we began public outreach and tribal outreach this year. This is a more complicated project because of a few different reasons. One being that the highway, we have a public works plan with the Coastal Commission that is within the local coastal program of unincorporated San Mateo County, and the highway is the boundary. So one side of the fuel break project is within the jurisdiction of our public works plan, and one side is in the City of Pacifica local coastal plan. So we just have a few things to navigate there. And I know that, you know, we've got the emergency order from the governor about, you know, suspending CEQA and the Coastal Act for emergency projects. We do still intend to go forward with CEQA and Coastal Act permitting for this project specifically because it will need a high level of public outreach, and also because those projects that are that are completed under the emergency order, that order doesn't cover the maintenance of those projects. So we want to make sure that any long-term planning we do includes maintenance, so that we can maintain the work that's being done in perpetuity versus just doing it once and walking away from it and having to do it all over in 5 years. So we do expect that this work will begin implementation on the ground in 2027. Now, I'd like to talk about the Neighborhood Chipper Program. So last year, we had our biggest Neighborhood Chipper Program yet. We assisted 832 homes in 31 neighborhoods across the county in increasing defensible space around their homes, and also provided technical assistance to landowners and residents. The Chipper Program is we call it a You Cut, We Chip model for folks that are able to cut vegetation within their 0 to 5 foot, 5 to 30 foot, 30 to 100 foot clearance around their homes and stack it at the street within the chipping program area. We will pay for a contractor to come by and chip it. For 2025, these are our preliminary chipping areas for the Midcoast. Me and Eddie were working on this up until 6:50 today. We are aware, as I'm sure you are, and I know you had a meeting about this with CAL FIRE, of the new fire severity hazard maps. We are anticipating an increased demand for chipping countywide as a result of those new maps. And in previous years, we did open up chipping to all of the Midcoast, partly in response to a lot of storm damage that had happened, trees falling after severe winter storms. We are not doing that initially at this point in time. We are limiting it to streets that fall within those moderate, high, or very high fire severity hazard zones as designated in the new maps. If we do end up having additional funds after those streets are served, we may be able to open up more streets at a later date. The chipping program, the chipping day for the Midcoast is May 27th this year. Mailers are going to go out to everybody's house, each household. But you can also sign up online using this QR code. And this information will also be available on the RCD's website in the coming week or so. But if you want to get a jump on it now, you could be the first person to sign up for neighborhood chipping in the Midcoast tonight. I also wanted to talk about another process and planning process that's happening, not just in countywide, but sort of regionally across the Santa Cruz Mountains, is the Santa Cruz Mountains Regional Priority Planning Process. And this is an initiative from the Department of Conservation. It's funded by the Coastal Conservancy, and locally it's spearheaded by really myself and Matt Abernathy, who's my counterpart at the RCD of Santa Cruz County. And along with the Santa Cruz Mountain Stewardship Network. And the goals are developing a suite of landscape scale projects that have been vetted by experts for their benefits for forest management, determine the obstacles preventing the implementation of those projects, match resources with needs, and the overall outcome is to position projects for funding opportunities in the future, increase regional scale and capacity for this work. And we're also like really eyeing Prop 4 funds to get kind of large scale implementation on the ground. And this map is a map of, it's a somewhat incomplete map, but a map of all of the work that's been completed in the Santa Cruz Mountains so far. Not as a part of this plan, but before this plan was even, a thing. This is the work that's been done so far in the Santa Cruz Mountains. You can see down here, Butte State Park. This is our Hutter and Wunderlich project can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, great. These are projects at Hutter and Wunderlich County Parks that the RCD managed in partnership with County Parks. This is Quarry Park right here. Obviously things are blown up a little bit, so it does look like all of Quarry Park has been managed as the sense of scale for this map, but those are the fuel breaks that were built in Quarry Park, both as the Governor's Project in 2019 and the Coastal Conservancy Project. So, I just wanted to include that as like a very high level overview of what has happened. And you can see there's some gaps and some areas that have not seen much forest management. So a lot of that is grassland on the coast side, but that is something we are looking at a countywide scale. If folks have project ideas that they want to be considered for the RPP, they can work with the RCD to get those included in the RPP process. We are currently submitting projects kind of like CRISP did, but in a different way. We're prioritizing them in a different way, and we've got a different geographic area. So we are really excited about that project, and hopefully it sets us up for some good funding opportunities in the future. So in general, how can we help you on the ground at your house or business or park? We are more than willing to provide technical assistance related to defensible space, vegetation management, neighborhood level planning, project design and management. Like I said, we work where we're invited. So if you have a concern, whether it be related to wildfires or erosion or wildlife habitat, we are more than willing to come out and take a look and happy to help and assist where we can. And that is really all I had to present with you all today. I'm happy to take questions.
Well, that's a lot, Timothy. Thank you. I think we'll go for questions from the council first and then to the public. Other questions from the council?
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, Timothy, thanks very much for that thorough report and a very interesting suite of projects that you guys are working on. I guess I'd invite you to go, if you can, just to go back and put up your Highway 92 skyline to the reservoirs slide. That's the one I was going to ask you about. So no doubt that's a corridor that's, heavily infested with invasive trees and lots of other invasive species there, that would certainly benefit from those being removed and replaced with native oak woodland. But we all know how long that takes relative to the rate at which weeds get established. So my question is about, you mentioned that, long-term planning is supposed to include maintenance. And I'm wondering, who's on the hook to do that? Because I'm thinking of it, depending on how you treat this area, it turns into a giant weed corridor. And I'd hate to see long-term maintenance fall to the hands of somebody who's just going to be out there, mowing the roadsides and basically farming the weeds. And so what is I know there's probably a lot of details to this, but if you could sort of go into how the treatments are going to look in areas of valuable habitat and how the long-term maintenance is going to look.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking it. Not related to this project, in general, how it typically looks is that the maintenance is the responsibility of the landowner wherever the project occurs, and with the RCD being able to provide best management practices, how to do the maintenance, all of that information, right? But funding for maintenance is often limited, although that's something we plan to include in our regional priority planning, is the importance of maintenance costs. So for this project in particular, the details are still being finalized. Now that we have John Martinez, who I mentioned earlier, is going to be managing this project for the RCD. So now that he's on board, he's already diving in, working with San Francisco's Public Utility Commission to really get the exact what's going to happen where figured out. But in general, our plan will be to treat the weeds in that corridor in advance of any work occurring, so that they are at least reduced by the time we get heavy machinery in there, or any type of vectoring potential of moving those plants around. So we'll have an initial phase where it's specifically focused on pampas grass, broom. I think there's a little bit of Cape Ivy in there, and taking care of that before we go in there and start masticating anything or skidding Monterey cypress logs around or anything like that. So we hope that will reduce the potential for increasing the amount of invasive species in that corridor by means of our projects. We've had pretty good success doing that in other projects, but that is our kind of high level plan. And then, it's going to be very site specific. There's some drainages that go through there. There are, we will be doing botanical surveys in advance of the project to make sure that we flag and protect any rare or sensitive or endangered species. We've got a whole list of protection measures that go along with any of these projects. We do nesting bird surveys. If there's a bird nest in a tree, we avoid that tree by a 50-foot buffer, and we monitor it until the nest has fledged. And then only then will we go back and do anything around that tree. So we've got we avoid wood rat nests by 5 feet. And we are very detail oriented when it comes to our protection measures. And so it'll really just depend on what we find in our initial biological surveys.
So the long-term management you're anticipating is going to go to like SFPUC, natural resource management
Perhaps SFPUC Natural Resource Management, Lisa Wayne runs a tight ship over there. And potentially there's potentially a role, CAL FIRE will have a type 1 hand crew that will be residing at the Glenwood Fire Center, which is in La Honda, for the next at least 5 to 10 years. And they may be available to assist with some of that maintenance work at the cost of CAL FIRE. Whereas meaning they will pay for their own time. So that's a potential. But yeah, that will also be finalized as part of the project. The final project plan is who will have the responsibility of maintenance and what that maintenance timeline will be.
I would brace yourself for wood rat removal and relocation up on the Skyline Trail. They had to move probably 200 nests along a couple of miles of corridor there.
I've had to remove a few myself. We would only remove them if they were unoccupied. But I mean, I guess it depends on if they're all occupied, but in most of our work, we've been able to avoid them and only have to relocate unoccupied middens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody questions?
I do not.
Yes. I have a question. Maybe not your office, but I understand that RCD is going to be helping relocate some sewer lines that are along the bluff along Valamar Street in West Beach. Is that correct?
I can't say for certain. I have heard talk of it in our office. I believe some of my coworkers are working on that. That would be Jared Fisher's team, the water resources team. And I'm happy to connect you to Claire or connect him with the council.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Kevin?
Yes, hi there. It's Kevin. Nice to meet you. Thank you for the report. I have a few questions actually. So in looking at your budget, I'm, like most others, looking at the news and hearing things about funding cuts. Specifically, I was concerned about the federal cuts to California coastlands. And I wonder if that is going to play any role in the amount of work that you're able to do. Are you expecting some hardship because of those cuts in terms of your programs? I can let you answer one at a time if you want.
Sure, I'll take that one first. There are some federal grants that we do have. My program is more state funded. The CAL FIRE and Coastal Conservancy funds, and with the passage of Prop 4, we feel that work is pretty secure. What I am concerned about is our Measure K funding, because I know that if the county loses federal funding and then, there will be new priorities for Measure K or potentially more urgent priorities than planning for a potential wildfire when you've got more urgent, acute needs at the county level. So that's something I do have my eyes on it, because those funds do make it, they do make a lot of the work that we do possible, even though it's only a small portion of our budget.
Can you keep posted about that? Yeah,
for sure. There are other grants. Our habitat and water teams have a big NOAA grant, which we still have. We got a small amount of money from GGRA to do some fuel work around Montera that is currently frozen. But we are hopeful that we can figure out a way to get that work done either way.
Okay. The second question was around, you mentioned that you don't have regulation typically that you can work with a resident as well as an organization or a specific group. So if a resident was concerned about, we have a lot of paper roads here, and it's come up in previous meetings, and you talked about kind of road solvency. So could a group of neighbors or a neighbor who happens to live on one of those roads who oftentimes it's not accessible or does not seem like a solid enough thoroughfare, are you able to come out? And you said you do work on solvency, or do you just provide the T aid on that?
We typically provide the TA. Sometimes we can get a consultant out there that can help with like partial designs. It really depends on the road. For the paper streets, it's a little bit trickier. So it would be really site specific on what we would be able to provide. But for example, you know, we are working with folks on the Midcoast around that have lots on paper streets that are not accessible, but have a lot of eucalyptus on them, or have a lot of understory vegetation that needs management.
Sure.
We've kind of been working to build those relationships. But as far as the road solvency piece goes, I don't want to give you the wrong answer, so I'm not exactly sure, but I can get you more information if you have a specific road in mind.
I mean, I think that would be helpful. I think the broader concern is how to get those streets to a level where they are permanently serviceable, but then also the county says that it will not service any paper streets until it's reached a certain threshold. So I can imagine a lot of TA around that, but I won't beat a dead horse. In terms of safety or fire preparedness and safety, what is your connection with the Open Space Trust? Is there a conflict, an organizational conflict in terms of you looking at work, especially along, I can only speak for my neighborhood directly, along El Granada Boulevard, the fire break was never completed. There's a lot of logs that remain in the canopy where the volatility of those logs has not been established. Now the new reports, more realistic reporting has been done on that, saying that even a 50-foot fire break is not sufficient for those embers, which can travel up to 2 miles and 50 feet, I believe, in order to blunt them to a lesser level of severity, but not to get us out of the red. So is that something that you would be able to take on without conflict within county, CAL FIRE, et cetera?
I'm a little by open space. You mean Peninsula Open Space Trust? Or
yes.
We work really closely with Peninsula Open Space Trust on many different projects. We can't invite ourselves to work on someone's project. If they invited us to advise them or work with them, then 100%.
Well, there are a lot of houses that I think could potentially reach out to you and ask for some assistance. I'm just wondering if there's limitations.
Yeah, and I would welcome those requests. And as I said, we have a very close partnership with the Open Space Trust. Our executive director used to work for the Open Space Trust once upon a time. We do like I said, we've partnered with them on many projects in the past and have a good relationship with them. But I would not, you know, I can't tell them how to manage their land, but I can work across boundary where permitted to find solutions that work for as many people as possible.
And then my last question is just about 92 and the one in Pacifica, and kind of similar or piggybacking off of what Chris said. I'm wondering if in the overall scheme of those projects, you know, I have sat in traffic for trees that have come down that literally like teeter on the end of the freeway or of the highway, and in Pacifica, especially that roundabout that goes from Lindemar and the Devil's Slide, some of those trees are right up against your car. There's no relief at all, and a tree goes down and you're hours in traffic. So is there part of this kind of broader plan, a plan to create more of a buffer zone for vehicles and for those trees, pushing them back a bit further into the natural forestry line?
Yeah, that is exactly the plan, is to remove trees. Remove trees that have, especially hazard trees, like weakened, damaged, or dying trees that pose a striking hazard to the roadway or the right of way or any type of infrastructure. And then from a fire perspective, just the radiant heat in some of those areas from a potential wildfire, we would really work to increase that buffer so that you could drive through it.
Right. That's great. Thank you. Scott?
So I just have one fairly specific quick question for you. I'm super psyched about the wood chipper program after my neighborhood, which is the East Miramar, was put on the very high fire danger list. On May 27th, that's El Granada's day. Is the east side of Miramar included in El Granada?
I believe so. And I can confirm
Is that
that
little
with
green
you, but
patch, Corey?
I'm almost
the-
positive.
The little green patch on the bottom is the
That's
Marada.
East, like surf, yeah, Marada East.
So my neighborhood is a little bit southeast of that, and that is yellow. So that's included, right?
Yeah, and I've got a
Okay.
I've got a detailed map
Personal agenda here.
that
He's
I
gonna be the first one to sign up.
Yeah, just sign up.
I already signed up.
Yeah, there you go.
I-
So if you're not included, we'll let you know. But also, like I said, these are our preliminary maps. If you're on the border, like talk to us, and I'm sure we can figure something out. But I think your neighborhood is included in
Okay.
this area here. Yeah.
Yeah, I drove around El Granada, my neighborhood, Montero, with an eye for Zone 0. After that, it was introduced to us on our last meeting, and there is a lot of houses that have trees next to them. So I'm excited about the wood chipper program.
Yeah, and there is you will get this flyer in the mail about what we can and cannot chip. Only 8 inches, up to 8 inches in diameter. But we hope that it is helpful, at least if it doesn't get all of what you need, it'll get a good start.
Thanks.
Connie, did you have a question?
Just very quickly, how can the community, thanks for the report. How can the community reach you if they want to get support for looking at their defensible space?
Yeah, so my email is timothy@sanmatoercd.org. You can also always reach out to fire@sanmatoercd.org. We will be training up some of our staff along with the Fire Safe Council. Denise Enia at the Fire Safe Council was the one that had this idea and got it organized to be defensible space inspectors. So that should happen sometime this summer. So we will be able to, I mean, we know the regulations at a high level now, but that we'll be able to actually, have that refined eye for defensible space after those certifications.
Thank you.
Okay, we will go to public questions, but I want to bring something up now because we're running out of time. We have less than an hour left before our 9:30 deadline. We have the presentation of the stormwater report, which we are definitely going to do. There are other items on the agenda. There are some decisions that the council needs to make after we hear the stormwater report and after questions are asked. And the major decisions that we need to make are whether we adopt this as a report from the MCC to send to the county and what we do about peer review financing. I don't see how we're going to get all through everything tonight. My top of the head proposal is that we listen to the stormwater report, which should take about half an hour, and that we defer our decision-making until next meeting. And that we also defer the item about the newsletter until the next meeting.
Are you looking for a motion?
I think I am looking for a
And would
motion.
you,
I move that we do that.
Okay.
would you also be deferring questions regarding the stormwater reports?
No, we can take some questions, but not very many.
Okay, right, exactly.
And maybe not very many. I don't know how we're gonna structure that, your proposal.
Well, I was thinking maybe if there's a handful of public comments versus council comments, council can kind of draft their questions or comments for the
For next
meeting.
time.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's it. So do you wanna, you're moving that we do all that?
I don't think we're finished with Timothy yet.
We're not.
Okay.
I just.
Okay,
I want to use up all our
do
time
what
on
Claire
public
said.
comment here.
Anybody second
I
that?
second that.
Okay,
Can you call the roll on that, Russ?
Wait, what was the motion? I'm sorry.
To do whatever Claire said, I think that's what the motion was.
Yes.
Does that last for perpetuity or?
We're dropping everything after the.
Tim Fox did call her the boss of the meeting, so.
Yes,
Thanks for bearing with us, Timothy.
yeah, we just.
No problem.
Housekeeping here,
Okay, you're dropping everything after the report, right?
except for council activity and future agendas.
Okay, then not everything after the report.
Yeah,
Just
look, that stuff in the middle. And we're not going to ask direct questions tonight from the council. It can only be from the public.
So
Okay.
I think Kimberly has a
What?
we have concerns about that.
You have a concern about that?
I'm a little concerned about putting the questions for the stormwater report off to the next meeting.
Well, that's where we're gonna make our decisions. What's your concern?
I think some were really, really thought it was important to deal with this tonight, and so.
We can't deal with it
This is-
tonight. We don't have time.
Okay.
I'm ready to vote.
So let's get a,
Okay.
no, do we have a first and a second?
Yes.
No, who was the
You
first?
I was the first.
Okay, can we just slow down for just a second, if you
Yes.
don't mind?
Okay.
So
I moved.
you're moving, okay,
I second.
to remove anything after the stormwater report.
Yes.
Allow public comment and
Okay.
defer our comments.
Okay,
We're gonna have discussion of the motion.
yeah.
Do you want to discuss it too?
Yeah, I think-
don't we just go into 10?
Well, that's another option. So we've got,
Well, that's if that'll even compensate for it, but
Do you believe that we can do what we need to do by 10?
Do I believe that?
Because you say go to 10 and then we fail
Well,
at 10.
the more
Are we gonna
we
go to 10:30?
Linger over this decision, the less likely we will.
I was thinking with Claire's first recommendation. I mean, I don't know.
10 is not much later than 9:30. I think we're way behind. This is gonna take a lot of time.
we're 45 minutes behind, at least, not more than 45.
So you're gonna call the roll?
Sure. Scott,
Yes.
Kevin,
An audience suggestion,
No.
No.
might race through the presentation and save some time that way.
I think your presentation deserves its full time.
Kimberly,
No,
Claire,
Yes.
Gus,
Abstain.
Chris,
I'm. Yes.
Connie, yes.
Okay, so we have 3 people who want to ask Timothy some questions, and I appreciate your patience. I guess 4 people, 5 people. Let's do 2 minutes each.
I'll try and
And
keep my answers brief as well.
we'll start with Greg.
It'll take less than 2 minutes. The most important comment I want to make is thank you to Tim. This is something we have asked the county about since I wrote them in 2018. And that evacuation and the trees around those 2 roads is just critical. So thank you. The question you probably can't answer, but I will point out that north of the Lanos Tunnel, in my opinion, is more of a hazard to the Midcoast evacuation than Highway 92. We already had trees fall during the January 23rd storm due to the ground being saturated and the stormwater, problem causing the loosening. So it's probably impossible for you to ask. And I know you said 2027, but I'm really hoping you can do something to mitigate the traffic blockage. Emergency responders were clogged in the middle of that disaster. Thanks for your work, though.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, I remember like the first MCC meeting I came to when I took my job, you asked us for this for this project. So I'm glad that we can follow through. And yeah, I think the timing piece is difficult. Part of it is related to the permitting. Part of it is related to just staff capacity. But we will do our best to get both projects done as quickly as we can.
Belinda?
Hi, Claire. Thank you. And thank you for your presentation, Timothy, to let us know what's going on and what the plans are. I have several questions, but I'm going to try and make this quick. I am sad about those iconic tree tunnels that the tourists and everybody enjoys. As we drive through there, they're going to be taken down, and it's probably not going to look great for a while, depending on what happens. Takes a long time to grow a tree. So My question is, what types of pesticides are you going to be using in those areas? Are you going to be recommending that the owners of the land use the pesticides? So that's the first one about pesticides. The second one is if you're planning to get a lot of it done by summer and the contractors are going to be hired, how are you going to manage preventing the destruction of a lot of the birds during nesting season? The other one is, are you going to be considering erosion and flooding in those areas if you take out a lot of vegetation? And then the other part is the trajectory of the effect of the removal of all these trees in our coastal area. Are you considering the Pacific Flyways migratory bird zone that flies right through here? So, and how that would be affected. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for all those questions. So let me try. I'm going to try and remember all of them. But one, the pesticide, that was number one, right?
Right.
I can't say exactly which pesticides will be used. The formulations will likely be recommended by a pest control advisor who's an expert in that field. I can say for eucalyptus and the like, it will likely be Garland. For cypress, I don't actually believe that we will need to use a pesticide on the cypress trees. And then for like the pampas grass and stuff like that, it could be, I'm not exactly sure. So I don't want to give you the wrong answer, but we can definitely keep you in the loop.
Will there be, oh, sorry for that. Will there be any mechanical alternatives being used? I know pampas grass can be pulled by bobcats.
Where we can, we will.
Okay.
So yeah, it's integrated pest management. So we always try to use herbicide as the last resort. Yes, yeah. So what was the next question? The birds, right? Because work in the summer.
Yes.
So we do bird surveys of all of our work areas. We survey in front of equipment. We survey within a certain amount of time between when the survey occurs and when the work occurs. So that and we've got very skilled biologists that go out there very early in the morning with binoculars and look for not only nests themselves, but nesting activity. So birds flying in or out or carrying nesting material or birds acting defensive. And if there is a nest suspected, that area will be flagged for avoidance until the activity witnessed ceases. And that's typically either because the nest has fledged or the nest has failed for either reason. Nests fail and fledge all the time. And only after either of those events occurs will that no disturbance buffer be lifted around any suspected nesting activity. And then for the flyway, yes, we definitely are, we have that in mind. And in the long run, I feel that our native tree species do provide a more varied and preferable habitat than many of the non-native species to most of our native passerine birds and migratory birds. Our goal is never to just clear cut anything and walk away, right? We always want to think about what comes after. And in many of our coastal ecosystems, revegetation can happen passively, and that native species have a seed source in the ground, and they often have the moisture from the fog drip and the marine layer to regenerate themselves. But we would also want to be very careful at monitoring what comes back and how we would want to adaptively manage that moving forward.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. So you're saying with the contractor.
Wait. I would really like to speed this up a little bit.
Okay.
Both if a question has already been answered, a point has already been made, don't make it again. And Timothy, if you could make your answers maybe a little bit more general, that would be helpful at this point.
Okay.
I'm done. Thank you.
Sid, go ahead.
Thank you, Claire. I have
Thank
two
you.
questions. One, on the map for the chipper program, it looked like Airport Boulevard or Airport Street in Moss Beach had a yellow line. Does that mean neighborhoods near Airport Street could pile up their brush out on Airport, or was that just a delineation?
I think it's just the delineation.
Okay, we're out of luck then. And then secondly, I just want to thank you so much for finally getting to doing the work on Devil's Slide, because it's so narrow there. And I just drove through there tonight on my way back to attend the meeting, and they don't ever maintain it. And all along, I mean, Caltrans does not. There's fallen logs. There's logs leaning off the side of the hillside that are, I guess they fell, but they've never been removed. And then there's a lot of leaf debris from the eucalyptus in that grove of eucalyptus. And when it
Okay, that's
rains,
why they're doing the
it kind of
project.
piles up on the gutters of the road. So my question about that is, will the, I think she asked it too, will you be doing any irrigation work after you've removed debris?
We probably wouldn't be doing any irrigation work unless it was required for anything that we were going to plant in its place.
Oh no, there's no room to plant on the shoulders of Devil's Slide there.
Agreed.
There's barely room for bicycles.
Okay, so Dan?
Thanks, Sid.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for your everything there. I want to echo the concern and the value of the tree tunnels that Melinda recently commented on. You know, some areas it's kind of a monoculture of eucalyptus, and some areas it's more like 92 is there's a wide variety. And I think that, you know, some trees are considered maybe more of a fire hazard, and others are not necessarily a fire hazard, and they're just beautiful and very important. And so what I don't want to see is just a blanket cutting of every single tree, whether it's considered a hazard or whether it's considered, you know, a tree limb falling, etc., to minimize the overall damage. Because I know 35 years living here, driving on 92, you know, at certain times of the year, sun is hitting these leaves in a certain way, and it's just magnificently beautiful.
Dan, could
And,
you wrap it up?
30 seconds.
Please.
Yeah, thanks for that interruption. I'm just trying to finish real quickly.
We're trying to finish the meeting.
What?
Please wrap it up.
Yeah, well, I'm doing that. So I just want that thorough consideration of not doing just a widespread killing everything on the side of the road, whether or not it's considered fire, the fire hazard, of course, and potential for limbs falling. This is all should be considered, but I think that there's going to be a lot of vegetation, trees that could survive and remain an asset to everybody that uses that highway and loves nature and trees and all the wildlife that supports the tree support. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I hear your concern. We don't have enough money to cut down all the trees, so that won't be a worry. And I think there's some oak trees underneath that may survive or that are already mature. So looking forward to seeing what happens.
Okay, the two people in the room, go ahead.
Hi, it's Jane.
Hey, Jane.
I'm going to turn, thank you for your presentation, Timothy. I'm going to turn my questions into comments, and because they're really big questions. I'm concerned about how many trees are going to get cut down as far as tree canopy, because we're seeing tree canopy being sort of the identified solution for climate change, and climate change is such a tricky thing. But when I listened to Jed Wilson at the last MCC meeting, it sounds like from Santa Cruz to Pacifica, there's going to be a door-to-door attempt to get people to, you know, make sure they're home hardened. And then the parks will be taking trees down. We have lots that will be cleared when the houses go up. And then I just read that the federal government's going to be logging in Tahoe, Big Sur, and possibly Yosemite 20 to 60% of their trees.
Wow.
So one of the questions I have is, both in the county level and the state level, is anybody monitoring the tree canopy? Because we've got this shortened CEQA and we could lose a lot of the moisture in Northern California. So that's one comment. The other comment I just wanted to make is I also have concerns about the poisons, and my understanding is no one's monitoring the ocean for how many poisons are going in there. There have been some concerns about the motorbikes up in the GGNRA, and I don't think anyone's monitoring the sparks
I
from
think your
that.
time is up.
Thank you
Wrap
very
up.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Burnett.
Jane.
Burnett, you had your hand up, I think. Carl, it's Carl. The mask is, this is fooling me here.
Lots of concerns. I hope everybody's aware of an act that's just started to go through Congress called Fix the Forests, that's going to demolish many of our national forests. Please get in touch with your senators and object to them passing it. The House has already passed it with bipartisan support, which leads to my next point and question. Much of what's being done in forests now is being done all of a sudden because of the horrendous fires in Southern California. And my question is, what scientific information is going into the decisions that RCD is making? Many of these, I fully encourage taking down all the damn cypress trees. The biodiversity will be much higher after they're gone. Everybody can go to Edgewood County Park if they want to verify that. In a similar situation, similar altitude. However, it's very worrisome about how the RCD and other are being informed. I hear the word mastication and I seize up. The top couple of inches of forest soil are the most important. And mastication, like has been done in Butynyl, is not a good idea.
Well, I'll just respond to a couple of those really quickly in that.
Okay.
We always use the best available science. We are implementing we just had a meeting today about new monitoring protocols that are going in at all of our projects that are going to be standardized across the Santa Cruz Mountains to evaluate the effects of our work. I can say qualitatively that we see Trillium coming up in our project areas after we've masticated within 6 months. Trillium has a very sensitive root system to compaction or soil disturbance. So while I won't say there are no impacts, I will say that for things like mastication, our goal is to really mimic the effects of a low intensity fire in areas that it's not safe to set on fire.
Except low intensity fire leaves the surface alone. And mastication does not. It gets down inches into that forest soil, which is a very rich source of the forest biology.
It does not get down many inches into the soil.
Anyway, that's one of my
but
concerns. Another concern is a scientifically unsound practice of spraying Phosgene as a fire retardant, which was casually put to us last time in this meeting as a standard way of doing things. It's not.
Carl, could you?
The current science is that those toxic chemicals are extremely damaging to all kinds of life. And there's an adherent in those chemicals, that retardant, that sticks to things and keeps those toxic chemicals around for a long time. And I hope the RCD and others, when they're thinking about fire and so forth, are thinking about firefighting methods that do not put extra toxins into our environment. Thank you.
Yeah, we have no plans to use Phosgene in any of our projects.
Timothy, I appreciate everything
Thank
you've
you all.
shared with us tonight. And I appreciate your patience with our internal pressures.
No problem.
We'll hope to have you back another time.
Thank you.
Thank
We have
you.
access
All of you. Thank you so much.
Yes. We will have that. It'll be posted. It'll be posted. Okay, so I think
I'll
at
send you
this
my
point.
slides.
What?
I was just going to say I will send you my slide deck.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll put it on our website. Thank you. At this point, I think we are going to have to end up going to 10. But we can wait until we get to 9:30 and then vote to see if we're going to 10. Well, let's start with Greg's presentation. I'll turn it over to Gus.
Okay. Well, I know I want to just thank Greg for his leadership in bringing this stormwater report to us. It represents quite a bit of work over quite a bit of time and incorporates a lot of feedback from the entire coast side. So with that, I'll turn it over to Greg, who's going to walk us through that report.
I will need to have the ability to share my screen. I texted MCC host a while ago, but I don't see that I can do it. Now I can. Okay. I'm not going to try and optimize this. Can you live with what you're seeing right now?
Yeah, it's fine.
All right. I'm going to try and minimize my talking and skip a lot of the details. Some of you have seen these before, and we'll allow the questions from the council to direct things. What we're trying to prevent is serious. There are major risks to the health and safety of the people who live here, not just the evacuation routes being blocked, not just people being flooded out of their homes, not just trees falling on houses. I had some videos. I'll skip them. I invite you to look at them. I don't mean to catastrophize, but I know 3 people whose houses were crushed. And we had, was it last meeting, a woman come here almost in tears about the flooding on Cedar Street in Montera. And last year, some of you may remember a woman who came and said she couldn't sleep. She was on the medians in El Granada. So this is serious stuff. And the people that I've spoken to haven't spent just $15 or $25 or $50,000. I found one resident who had to spend $100,000 to defend herself against the runoff caused by the county's construction permitting, and another $200,000. And Ann Rothman isn't even back in her house yet, as far as I know. She was flooded out. I have a slide up showing the scope and process. I will just comment on why I included non-MCC jurisdictions. One reason is because we share roads and a sewer plant with Caltrans and Half Moon Bay. And the failures on that road and in that sewer plant are our vulnerabilities as well. I feel that social justice requires broad inclusion. That's why I included Moon Ridge. And also because these neighborhoods are examples of best and worst practices. I'll skip this process notes slide. You're aware this is our 3rd draft. I just said we have an unsafe situation and emergency responders have been compromised. There are also concerns about water quality that I did not really treat in this report. The problem is we have the highest rainfall in the county. I received contributions from people in all these neighborhoods. The report was over 270 pages, and I didn't even write the first 90. 180 pages of it is attachments and testimonies and reports provided by members of the community and people like Burnett Silveria, people on 2nd Street. I think Mary Duffy's here, contributed a lot of stuff that's in this report. We have flooding all over the place. There is one thing to note that I think is important. So I will mention Ocean Colony in Half Moon Bay, which was built in the 70s to early 80s, created its own stormwater management system, funds it with regular homeowners association dues, and had no adverse events from the January 23 storms. The only thing that happened was, and this was by design, a couple of fairways were flooded. They would not disclose details of their costs and efforts, although they did draft up some materials in the report. This proves that if you design and anticipate things, you can do it right. There's one other thing I want to touch on here. The sewer authority Midcoast side has a pipeline that runs from Montera down to Half Moon Bay to the plant. Even before the January 23 storm, there were a couple of Decembers where the plant was overwhelmed. There's excess infiltration and inflow coming from Half Moon Bay. We've had major spills. I think we're not going to get fines of 30 to 40 million because everybody suffered so much in January that the Regional Water Control Board is not going to move forward with that. But the work there is not done. In fact, Sam was considering on April 14th to have a meeting on some more wet weather storage on this pipeline. I understand that meeting's now been canceled, but I expect it to go forward. But here's the problem we're dealing with in a nutshell. On the day that we had that January 1st, 23 storm, the watershed that includes Pilicetus Creek had a 200-fold surge in stormwater. This is a logarithmic scale. If we were to put 1 inch of water on the floor in your conference room, then it would reach the top of the next story above you if there were one. That's how big an increase it was. It was huge. And we really need to do more about protecting and thinking through the watershed impacts of this kind of stormwater. I'm glad to see they're dealing with some of the evacuation issues, Timothy Federal, and the work on the trees. Those trees, of course, are a risk. But there's also flooding in a bunch of places. Surfers Beach, the airport, I had to drive through a lake and risk my car to get to the plant that day. There's more, but I'll skip the details. This comes from the fact that development, as practiced by the county up to this point, uses inadequate design storms and designs for a threshold of rainfall that's way too low. At one point, they were using a 5.03 design storm for 100 years, but they were really planning for the 10-year storm at 3 inches. We already had 6, 7, and 8 inch storms in the Midcoast as documented by the Montero Water and Sanitary District. What makes this even worse is that a lot of what's called green stormwater infrastructure, which is part of the approach the county's using to try and cope with this, doesn't begin to capture the amount of rainfall. As you can see on this lower picture here, what was a 100-year storm, 5 inches, green stormwater infrastructure captures 3.3% of the runoff. In other words, it's worthless. So we really need a major rethinking. These tables are now out of date. The most recent tables are now from NOAA. They are 2014 data. They now go out to 1,000-year storms. But this is what was in use at the time a lot of the county's permitting was done. So we have major changes. Science is really lagging dangerously behind reality. The National Academy of Sciences came out with a paper last year that said essentially, we've been estimating maximum precipitation wrong. We knew we were doing it wrong, but it didn't matter until, oops, the climate crisis. We have 3 things to do. We have to get better estimation methodologies. We have to consider the stormwater risk as a cumulative probability of exceedance. And if I could just try and use an example, it's not a question of flipping a coin, you have a 50% chance. The question is, if you had to flip that coin for 10 or 20 years, what would the probability be that you'd be safe? And that is not considered by our county in its design. It is considered by Caltrans in its highway design manuals. It is considered by Cal Forestry in its culverts designs. So we need to define what people are willing to live with in terms of how often they'll be flooded, and then design to prevent that. I think I pretty much covered this science and engineering floors. It is interesting though. There's one thing here that you ought to see. There is something called the C3 Regulated Projects Guide, and I have an excerpt here and I've underlined in red. It would be infeasible to size stormwater treatment measures to treat runoff from large storms that occur every few years. Infeasible? What that means is they don't want to spend the money. And that is really why we are at the risk we're at. Somebody put this together with a bias in favor of building more stuff, presumably because they want to collect more taxes, maybe because construction industry has an undue influence on our government. I don't know. But that risk is built right into the guide. All right, I'll skip the what's missing. One problem I think we still have is it's unclear who's in charge. You heard me comment earlier today about when the Parks Commission decided to avoid doing anything about the drainage in Quarry Park and said, well, we'll get the One Shoreline to do it. Well, I met with One Shoreline in February of 2023, and they didn't have any concern whatsoever about stormwater. They were focused on sea level rise, mostly on the bay side. I've got emails from the head of One Shoreline to say that. Recently, I'm pleased to say, last fall, they now have a woman in charge of dealing with it. But as we heard, she doesn't know anything about the drainage in Quarry Park. So there's a lack of connection in terms of the overall management of stormwater on the Midcoast. There are these half dozen entities who do things, but it's not clear to me there's any one person in charge. You heard Reed Bogert present, was it 2 years ago? He came and talked about the funding for stormwater throughout the county. And he showed this table, which is from 10 years ago, 11 years ago, that the county as a whole is $1 billion short in funding stormwater. That is a problem in our area as well. The funding is just not there. I think I talked about this. We need a realistic design storm metric. It has to include both new development and the design of a stormwater management system for our region. It has to consider that the rainfall in our area west of the coastal hills is higher than the rest of the county. It has to include what the water district has documented, that we already have had 6 and 8 inch storms. It has to include the entire watershed when you do a project analysis. You can't just look at one plot of land. And I'll point to the Cypress Point draft EIR we got. You may remember they designed it for the land they were going to occupy plus 1 acre. They are currently, that site is currently a repository of 11 acres of watershed. And even with that site serving as a retention pond, there were still 3 debris flows in that area of Moss Beach, Montara, one of which blocked half of Highway 1 during that storm. So I can see nothing but a major disaster if they go ahead with the current design of Cypress Point, because they didn't consider the entire watershed when they did their design. People who live on Cedar Street in Montara, people who live downhill of Quarry Park, downstream of Quarry Park, people who live on 2nd Street in Montara, right now are the victims of construction that did not consider the watershed at the lowest point and the impact on those properties. And then finally, when we define something as safe, we need to consider the cumulative probability over time. There are some potential water quality issues. I did not attempt to quantify them, but it's pretty clear that a lot of this runoff is untreated. It's unfiltered by natural means such as streams and wetlands. I don't believe it's measured regularly. And of course, we have these critical coastal areas right downstream of where we are. So in summary, we have a problem. It's getting worse. The science is flawed. County policies derived from that science are flawed. County funding is inadequate for needs. And we're going to recommend some improved policies and funding. I would also comment, when I began the report, nobody could identify any funding for stormwater. After some back and forth with DPW and planning, I think it was Camille Young who found there was a square footage based fee charged for new construction. It's a minimal amount of money. It's nowhere close to being able to afford on a pro rata basis the development of a stormwater management system and maintain it for the county. At one point in time, last time I got a printout, it was like $600,000 for the whole Midcoast. And they're spending a couple of $100,000 of it for that project you're going to hear about in El Granada. We need a much more robust impact fee, and we need some robust, let's call it a special assessment district to fund this thing going on. So the recommendations I put in the report are, and I know this is going to be difficult to swallow, but stop constructing impermeable surfaces until a validated stormwater management system exists. You're going to just wreck people on 2nd Street, Cedar Street, parts of El Granada, and then of course there's the Half Moon Bay people. Empower one agency to oversee stormwater management. Assign a person who we know who is a coastside stormwater manager. And I threw in something that I found was done in Orinda, California. They created a Citizens Infrastructure Oversight Commission to make sure that the priority areas were being addressed. And as we just heard tonight, they're doing something on Ferdinand Street in El Granada, and it's very unclear to me that that should be the priority for the money they're spending. It should be downwind of Quarry Park, in my opinion. But as far as I know, none of us got to review that. In Orinda, they made major improvements in the way they coordinated stormwater, sewer, water supply, gas, PG&E, and all the things that dig up roads. And it got so good that they doubled the size of that committee and empowered them with a portion of a new sales tax. So I think a little tighter feedback, and it could be between the MCC and the county, or it could be between a new entity, is necessary to really make that management process work well. I'm also suggesting focusing on some problem areas immediately, creating fiscal sustainably funding, providing a vehicle for people to report flooding. Now, one shoreline put out a next door post on this, recommending a particular website. I'm not sure that's the right one, but it's a good idea to have one. And I also wonder if we don't need to escalate our concerns above the county level. The Regional Quality Control Board might have something to say about the priority for dealing with this because of the risk to the sand plant and water quality in our area. I just want to make a pitch that the first social justice is sustainability. If we can't pass on to our descendants a sustainable world, we're really failing in our primary purpose. And we're really vulnerable here. A couple of pithy quotes came out of my research. One is, using historical data to plan is like driving by looking in the rearview mirror. And that's the point I tried to make about the use of outdated statistics on rainfall. And the other comment came from a former planning commissioner: we'll have to create more wetlands than we have already destroyed. Think about how big a job that is. But as the atmospheric rivers and stormwater have gotten more intense and we've lost all the permeable surfaces and the meandering creeks and the things that would have naturally controlled stormwater, you know, we have to do something to get it back. So I turn it over to the MCC. What do you guys and gals think the next steps on the report are? Do you want to incorporate comments from this meeting into a new draft? Do you want to pay for a peer review of the stormwater report? I reviewed it. We contacted 6 firms. One named Sutro responded. The others didn't respond, or thought it was too small a job. The bid they gave us was for $3,400, not the $3,000 we had previously budgeted. You know, under what conditions do you want to forward the report to the county? Do you want to email the report to stakeholders, as I did with the telecommunications report when I got all the local agencies to endorse it? I did the same thing with the local hazard mitigation plan. So it might be of value to have SAM and GCSD and MWSD and Half Moon Bay and everybody piggyback on the report and endorse it, send it to the county. You know, and do you want to define and implement an escalation strategy? So I'll stop there. That was a little under 20 minutes.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Greg.
Well done.
Great. Okay, so according to what we agreed to do, I will say this is not what I was expecting to hear. I was expecting something totally different, but we'll save that until next week. What we will do right now is ask for comments from the public, and we will listen closely to your comments, take notes, and we will come back next week and make final decisions on this. Unless someone, well, I guess that's what we decided to do. So we'll start with public comment. And I see Dave Wilson's hand up.
In the room, though.
Thank you. I was looking for raised hand and like said, I can't find things. They moved it again. So I want to say this version of this report and the slide deck are astoundingly better than the previous version. I'm very happy to see that. I personally do not think the MCC should spend money on a peer review of this. I don't see that that has any improvement on the impact to the county or any other body. If you do decide to have a peer review on it, I would remove most of the appendices, especially all the 2111 historical stuff. There's no point in having that reviewed again when it's already been reviewed multiple times. I really appreciate all the effort that went into this. I do have a few comments. There are still areas, and Greg alluded to one of them in the slide deck of the Cypress Point. There are statements that it's a retention basin. It is not a retention basin. It has never been a retention basin. It has never retained water other than what it retains in the soil, which is very important. That's the impervious surface issue that Greg very appropriately raises multiple times. But the retention ponds are not intended to hold all water. None of these things are ever intended to hold all the water. What they're intended to do is compensate for the impervious surface. So I think there are some statements like that, which are opinion that are stated as fact that need to be removed before the MCC passes this on. But I read it again all today, and I was very happy to find very few of those. So I think it would not be too hard to remove them, and I don't think it reduces the impact at all. The big thing that's left out of this is funding. And that ties into one of the other big things that Greg talked about, which is the Second Street area in Montera and the 2007 through 2011 process. The county does not have any way to pay for stormwater improvements as a county in its current structure, financial structure, more importantly. And so the way they solve that is they tell people to form stormwater districts. And the area in Montera, the second, third street area, the residents in that area chose not to pursue a stormwater district. There are good financial reasons for not doing it, but they also chose not to try and work with the county and their state legislatures to get it funded. And that's the reason that that study never went anywhere, is that no district was formed and no attempt was made to form a district. And that issue applies to almost all of these areas. It does not apply too much to the Miramontes Point flood area, which was in fact funded by the county and Midpen Housing. They could very easily, with the county involvement, have formed a stormwater district there and still could. But the residents are clearly not going to do it. So I do believe there needs to be some comment in here about funding. And I think there needs to be a pass removing opinion stated as fact. Other than that, I think this is an excellent job, and thank you very much for everybody who worked on it.
Are there other public comments on this?
Melinda's on the thing and then.
I didn't see it. Melinda, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to just comment, thanks Greg for that in-depth report and thorough report. I am concerned that with all of the removal of vegetation and trees, we're going to, with defensible space and all this fuel load management, we're going to have a lot more surface area that's impermeable and a lot more flooding because the vegetation is what holds the soil together. We're kind of in the 11th hour here with a lot of the species as well suffering. So when I look at the big picture, I see a lot of vegetation removal. I see potentially a lot more flooding. I also see a lot of species dying out. because we're taking out a lot of their habitat. So, and I also see a lot more spraying of pesticides. So big picture, I'm kind of worried about where this is all going. And I would love to hear what the RCD has to say about green infrastructure and how that could help, potentially help or not help based on what Greg said in his report about it. See if they have any comments, if he's still here. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't believe he's still here.
He's right there.
Oh, he is?
He's right here.
Still here. And I'd be happy to circle back on that. I'm not an expert in green infrastructure, but I know that, nature-based solutions are all our thing. I'm sure our water resources team would have more accurate and valuable feedback on that than me myself.
Yeah. You see Clarence Burnett and Sid and Dan.
I see Dan first. Who's, am I missing some others?
Burnett and Sid.
Burnett and Sid. We'll go with Dan and then Burnett and then Sid. Yeah, okay. Dan?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to echo on some many of the concerns that Melinda just brought up. A healthy soil situation with vegetation will absorb, the storm runoff best. That's what's nature designed. Having said that, I wanted to thank you, Greg. I'll be really short. Thank you, Greg, for all of your work into this. But the concerns that I just brought up are also important. It's not only just impermeable surfaces that are proposed, but which is a drawback, which is a hazard, which is a problem, but also increasing the just the natural landscape vegetation that naturally absorbs the moisture, which is part of the equation. And that's all. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Sid? We'll do Sid and then Burnett, and then we'll wrap this up for tonight. Sid, go ahead.
Thank you. Two things, Greg, I really appreciate what you worked on, and you definitely trimmed it down to a smaller presentation. Thank you for that. This is kind of towards Burnett and the people that live along Santa Maria, and Greg brought it up. I really think it is time to have the Water Resources Board to come and take a look at that situation, because I've been in so many presentations when Nicholas batted that around and said, oh, well, it's coming from Quarry Park, but we weren't responsible and all of that. But it was in their report, and they got that report pushed through without having the addendum for all of the runoff. So it was the very last day Don Horsley was in office, and they rushed it through. So then he tried to put it off on DPW. Now he's putting it off onto the one shoreline. And we do have a big problem with stormwater in the county. Over in my neighborhood in Seal Cove, the county decided to just channel all the water from our neighborhood over the edges of the cliff or going across private property. I don't know if they got any kind of, permission from Coastal Commission or anybody, but it runs right into an ASBS, Area of Biological Significance, which is the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve. So, that's something that this stormwater report didn't necessarily bring up, but it's something we have to think about in the future. And we all pay taxes, and the Department of Public Works, I attended Civics 101, Department of Public Works is responsible for stormwater. So the fact that they choose not to fund the Midcoast is because of that they haven't budgeted us for anything. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to add another person to our list of people that are speaking. So it'll be Mary Duffy and it will be Burnett. We'll go ahead with Burnett first. But then I said we were stopping after Burnett. I'm adding someone on because
We have two people in the room that have had their hand up.
They've had their hands up. Okay. We'll just be here till 10. It'll be fine. Burnett, please.
Okay, Burnett Severa, El Granada. Just a couple of quick comments. At the next MCC meeting, looks like we will be discussing the DPW's flooding, discussing with DPW the flooding at Ferdinand Avenue in Santa Maria. I just wanted to point out, if you haven't had an opportunity to read those portions, they are in the stormwater report. I think you'll find them particularly helpful for that next meeting. I wanted to make the comment that I am in favor of the peer review because it adds weight and authority to the stormwater report to get more people to look at it and to give it some weight in their concerns. And I just wanted to point out, if you haven't had an opportunity to look at the rest of Greg's presentation, it's quite well done. He has some sort of add-on slides that are particularly helpful. So when you get a chance, take a look at those. You'll find them very useful. And thanks again, Greg, for all the hard work.
Hey, Mary.
Thanks a lot. I just wanted to make a statement regarding I live on 2nd Street and have been working on this project for probably 18 of the 20 years that we've lived on this street. And part of the reason we did not go through with paying for the mitigation of the problem here is that the problem is not created on 2nd Street. The problem is created because of it. A large portion of the watershed in Montera basically comes through this creek that goes down alongside 2nd Street and is at this point hampering the ability for people to be able to get down the road. We are losing roadbed on a regular basis due to the flooding that is happening, not by a group of 10 residents, but really because the stormwater system has not been set up to be able to accommodate that. So I just wanted to clarify that. I also wanted to thank Greg for putting together the report. I think it's very comprehensive. This is the second report that we've done for this, and I'm hopeful that this round, maybe this will be able to, we'll be able to move it forward, if not in totality, at least baby steps to start to mitigate the problems that we're experiencing. So thank you, Council, for giving me a moment to speak, and thank you again, Greg, for your work.
Thank you.
This really quick. Thank you, Greg, for your report, and thank you for coming down to Deer Creek and walking the creek with me. There's an addendum at the back of the report that shows which homes in El Granada will be flooded. The lower El Granada is fairly sensitive to water flooding. The only other comment I wanted to make is we have 3 big problems. We have climate change, which is the tree canopy. We have wildfire, which is the vegetation, and we have flooding. And all of these are coming together at the same time. And I think if we could have interagency cooperation so that we can solve all 3 problems at the same time in a holistic viewpoint on the environment, that would be really great. Thank you.
And Carl?
I want to thank Greg. This is the most comprehensive overview of stormwater and flooding problems that's ever been done on the coast side. And I think I want to encourage the MCC, however you go through this, to move this, decide on what you want, and then move it on and be very forceful in how you move it on. Don't let it die here. I've raised a number of the individual things that Greg has dug into over 2 different rounds of local coastal plan changes. It's supposed to be done every 10 years, but they don't do it every 10 years. But I've gone through 2 rounds of that, raising some of these issues, and got blown off by the developer-dominated San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, who finally decide on the local coastal plan. So this is a well-done document. Polish it up and make sure you get it forwarded. Thank you.
Okay, so we will close this item now and we'll return to it next time. And we pulled the item from consent. I don't know if when we did our revision of our agenda, we said we were not going to return to that or not.
We were going to move it.
We eliminated that?
I think we have to because we pulled it from the agenda. We already we already, from consent that's on this agenda. So I don't, unless I'm wrong, I don't think we can move it to the next meeting.
I think that's correct.
Yeah.
So can I answer your question?
You can in fact move it to the next meeting if you want. My guess is you can resolve it fairly quickly and pass it.
We, over the last 5 years, we have multiple times advocated for any legislation that would enable us to attend these meetings remotely for just cause. So we were thinking that this is a continuation of our ongoing advocacy for this ability. Does that address what you were asking?
No, but we can proceed.
Okay.
If I may.
I asked a very specific question. I asked it in the context of proper procedure. I was interrupted by members of the public. I'm allowed to ask for clarification on a consent agenda item, and we can have a brief discussion.
Not
clarify
under
that.
the rules of
I
order.
don't want to hear this right now. I'm allowed to ask that question for clarification, and that's all I wanted was to ask for clarification why it was on the agenda when we'd never discussed it and never heard of it before.
Did what I just said address that?
Sure.
I'm not sure that it did, and I echo Chris's sentiment. I have never seen either one of these in anything, and so I actually don't know what I would be saying yes or no to. And preempted to this meeting, any materials that would have outlined specifically what this covers was not provided. At least I didn't get it, so I would not even be able to say yea or nay to something like this.
It was posted with the agenda materials.
Yeah, which I saw just recently.
And they're always posted at least 72 hours in advance.
Understood. It took me 3 days to get through the entire stormwater reports. I
Point
just wanted to
taken.
say that.
Yeah. So you wanted to say something?
First, I think Chris is right. Which I was concerned about, that perhaps we should have discussed this first before we propose the letter. I did mention this item in future agendas at the last meeting, but that is the only time that we've mentioned it.
We could decide to agendize it for next meeting if people are not prepared to vote on it tonight.
I'm not prepared.
Okay, so is
Could I make a public comment?
No.
Go ahead and say what you're gonna say.
So this grew out of correspondence I had with Senator Becker a couple of years ago. And Rubio was thinking of doing a bill like this. The way I left it with Becker was we were going to pass a law that exempted advisory boards who had no budgetary or rulemaking authority from being subject to this condition that everybody had to attend in person all the time, and that Zoom was going to be acceptable for advisory boards. So my suggestion is, instead of writing as you have in the letter about the number of times somebody can do it, just go back to what was on the table. And I don't know why Rubio withdrew it. Go back to asking that advisory boards be exempted from this ridiculous provision.
I think I can speak to that.
If you want to. We did consult with Tim Fox on this.
So we did consult with Tim Fox. There are currently two bills, and I might get this wrong. There is Senate Bill 329. I'm not sure of the number right now. Sorry, I'll see if I can put them in the chat. But there are two Senate bills. The other one I think is 707, and they do exactly that. They address advisory boards specifically. The problem with those bills is that the MCC would not be included because any elected body is not included in the advisory board bill as it currently stands. So while it would impact us on some things marginally, it by and large wouldn't apply to the MCC.
And would we create our own rules that we could abide by?
No.
No, this is state legislation. And so AB 259 currently, which is winding its way through the process, is the bill, the assembly bill that would essentially make AB 2449 permanent. And so that is the reason that we then suggested to add that portion that we have in this current letter to sort of add in something that would at least give us some flexibility for those who are caregivers or who, have childcare.
So it sounds as though at least two people are not prepared to vote on this tonight.
I'm more prepared now, but yeah.
Is there a motion to vote on approving this?
I just, again, I want to clarify, I was only asking about how this showed up on a consent agenda, having never. I was never aware that it was even an item. That's all I was trying to understand.
And
I have no problem with the bill itself.
Okay, I move that we vote on this.
Second.
I'm a little concerned that people don't understand it totally, and this is not urgent. So I'm okay if we want to push it to the next meeting and discuss it more. But I do think it is important to understand it and, to make sure that if there are other ideas for what we should do, then we have all that on the table. I'm sorry, Claire.
I apologize if it's holding anybody back, but I would have more time to just review and have a chance to actually look at it and vote on it at the next meeting.
So do we need to vote on it and say no and then re-agendize it, or can we just punt it to next week?
I think move it to the next meeting.
Well, yes, I mean. Technically.
So we pulled it to
Yeah.
discuss it.
Yeah.
And if the outcome of our discussion is to re-agendaize it at a future time, to redo it and vote on it, it can be as agenda, it can be another consent agenda, it could be agendized.
I'm okay with that.
Should we
If
do
we
that?
can do that.
Okay, so from a procedural standpoint, can we just do that, or do we have to vote on doing that?
That's my question.
Yes. Yes, that is the question. So I just move that we move it.
I second that.
Okay, we'll move it.
Let's vote on that.
Okay, sounds good.
Oh, I put the wrong one in chat.
Connie, you
How
got
do
it.
you get?
Oh, I'm ready.
We made a motion to move it and I seconded it.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Chris,
Yes.
Gus,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Kimberly.
Is this to move it to the next meeting? Yes.
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Connie, yes.
Okay.
Okay, council activity.
I don't have any update for a meeting, but I do want to say something. I feel like at our next meeting, we need to give the appropriate time to Greg's report. Like I said, it took me 3 days to get through the full report. I did have a conversation with Greg that was very helpful, but I don't think that 45 minutes or an hour are even close to enough time for us to discuss this and to make a serious recommendation about what we want to put forward to the county. I think it's just a way more in-depth report than I thought, and there are a lot of questions. I have 3 pages of questions.
So you're talking about this future agendas.
Yes.
I think we need to rework the next meeting's agenda, and I agree with you in general.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. We got Gus over there.
Council activity.
Yes.
I'm on the project for safe routes to school for Farallon View Elementary. We're gonna do a walk audit on Thursday, the 24th at 7:20 a.m. If anybody is interested in that, in participating in that walk audit, just reach out to me, but it's gonna happen at Farallon.
At 7:20.
7:20 a.m. on Thursday, the 24th.
I'm so glad you're doing that.
Good job. That's
great.
awesome. That is awesome.
If I was up at 7 hours.
So I apologize. I don't know if I've been as on top of things as I should be tonight, but I'm still recovering from pneumonia and
You've been doing great.
Yes.
It's, maybe I should have let Kimberly do it again. But next week we'll see how it goes. Anything else, or should we adjourn?
I'll just tell you, I did start to connect with a group called KEEP, which is the Coastal Emergency Action Plan Group. And we'll continue to do that and bring back any updates from them, but they have a very big consortium of people. They did talk about creating a consolidated calendar across Half Moon Bay and the Midcoast so that people could see the events in one central location, because everybody's starting to stack up on the same weekends. So it was a really great response that Dave Osgrove from the Department of Emergency Management runs the group, and I'll bring updates from there.
Well, I have a question for you that, I think there's going to be an emergency services fair
There's
coming up.
April 26th, I think it is, at the county convention center.
Okay, that's the one in San Mateo. Is there also one in Half Moon Bay?
There's one at the library, yeah, in the evening. There's something in the library in the evening, and that's why they were saying there's so many groups with competing stuff on the same weekend, and then 27th is the one down at what is the group down at the airport? So yes, there's two of them.
Last year, we participated in something in Half Moon Bay, but I guess they're not having that this year. It was out on the street.
April 26th.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
April
did the
26th.
street fair one, the one in the street in Half Moon Bay. But there's not gonna be room in the library for more than.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know all the details because I was just the first time I sat in a meeting and they were running through all the updates, so I didn't want to stop everybody, but yeah, I'll bring updates. But yeah, there's a number of things going on the 26th on the same day, which is unfortunate. So they asked about, can we get maybe the chamber they suggested maybe the chamber be the group that would have a consolidated calendar for the city and the Midcoast so that people could see everything in one area across the whole coast side, see what events were coming up. And then they would also use it to manage, the planning of events. So hopefully that'll take place.
Well, the newspaper used to do that, but I guess this,
Yeah.
okay.
Big milestone for the Harbor District for the Surface Beach Sand Nourishment Project that they've put out the invitation for bids to actually do that work. So all the permitting is done, all the design, engineering, everything is done. They're just looking for contractors who have time to do that this year. Finally, after many years, it's gonna happen.
Anybody else? Okay.
Just to point out, the Coastal Commission in May, the Half Moon Bay's project for the Hyatt will come before the Coastal Commission then, if anybody's interested in that, as it could have impact on traffic.
Anybody want to adjourn?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute. Do I write things?
Yes, well, if anybody needs,
Look,